He had billions in the bank, but not a penny of respect. Why? Simply because he wore a uniform. It is a jagged pill to swallow, isn't it? Realizing that in our modern world, a person's value is often measured by the label on their shirt rather than the content of their character. We have all felt that cold sting of judgment, the sinking fear that genuine kindness has become nothing more than a ghost story. Enter Patrick Marshall. To the world, he is just an overworked delivery boy. But underneath that cap hides a secret identity, a billionaire conducting a risky social experiment. And then there is Violet Parker, a gentle soul trapped in a drama of servitude, who offers him the one thing his money cannot buy: dignity. This is not just a love story, it is a collision of destiny where a rich man-poor woman dynamic is about to be flipped upside down. But be warned, the road to redemption is paved with betrayal. Patrick is about to risk his entire empire for a woman who does not even know his real name. As the tension builds toward a shocking reveal, one question remains: when the truth comes out, will it result in true love or total ruin? If you are ready to witness a karma so powerful it will leave you breathless, you have found your home. Subscribe to become part of a community that values the truth behind the mask. Like this video to take a stand for the underdog, comment hope if you believe in second chances, and share this story to remind the world that things are not always what they seem. Let's dive in. Com certeza, meu amigo. Vamos mergulhar fundo nessa narrativa. Prepare o texto completo, seguindo rigorosamente a estrutura de 8 parágrafos por tópico, mantendo a densidade visual de 7 linhas aproximadamente para garantir aquela robustez que retema atenção. Aqui está a sua obra-prima de engajamento, do tópico 1 ao 16, sem interruptos. Topic 1: The weight of the box. The midday sun was beating down mercilessly on the pavement, turning the driveway of the sprawling estate into a shimmering mirage of heat and exhaustion. Patrick Marshall, wiping beads of sweat from his forehead, adjusted his cap and gripped the heavy package with both hands, his knuckles turning white from the strain. He was just a delivery boy in the eyes of the world, invisible to those who lived behind these gilded gates, yet he marched forward with a quiet dignity that seemed out of place in such a humble uniform. The mansion loomed ahead, an architectural beast of glass and stone that screamed wealth, but as Patrick approached the heavy oak doors, he felt a familiar knot of tension tightening in his chest, a premonition of the judgment that often awaited him in places like this. He rang the doorbell, shifting the weight of the box to his hip, waiting for what felt like an eternity before the door swung open to reveal a man whose face was twisted in immediate annoyance. The owner, clad in a silk robe that probably cost more than Patrick's entire yearly salary, didn't even glance at the package. Instead, he looked at his watch with a theatrical sigh that dripped with disdain. "You're late," the man snapped, his voice cutting through the humid air like a serrated knife, completely ignoring the fact that Patrick was actually 10 minutes ahead of the scheduled slot. It was a classic display of power, a small man trying to feel big by belittling someone he deemed beneath him, a scene that Patrick had witnessed 1,000 times before in his line of work. "I apologize, sir," traffic was Patrick began, trying to maintain a professional tone, but the owner cut him off with a dismissive wave of his hand, as if swatting away a fly. "I don't pay for excuses, I pay for service," the man barked, snatching the clipboard from Patrick's hands to scribble a signature that looked more like an angry scratch. The humiliation was palpable, a thick cloud hanging over the interaction, but Patrick held his ground, his eyes scanning the interior of the hallway where he spotted a young woman polishing a vase. This was Violet Parker, and even from a distance, her posture screamed of a silent, suffocating drama that she was forced to endure every single day within these cold, unfeeling walls. Violet looked up, her eyes locking with Patrick's for a fleeting second, and in that brief exchange, a spark of shared humanity bridged the gap between them. She saw the fatigue in his shoulders and the unfairness of the situation, and without thinking, she stepped forward, risking the wrath of her employer. "Would you like a glass of water?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, a tiny act of rebellion wrapped in basic decency. The owner spun around, his face flushing with rage at the interruption, but for Patrick, that small offer was like a drop of rain in a drought, a sign that kindness hadn't completely vanished from this zip code. The owner scoffed, "He's not a guest, Violet, get back to work," dismissing her gesture as if it were a stain on his pristine floor. Patrick felt a surge of protective anger, not for himself, but for her. He saw the way she flinched, a reaction born of long-term conditioning to cruelty. It was a heartbreaking snapshot of a rich man-poor woman dynamic where the currency wasn't money, but basic respect, and Violet was clearly operating in a deficit she didn't create. He gave her a small, grateful nod, a silent promise that her kindness had been noted, before turning back to the owner with a stoic expression that hid the storm brewing behind his eyes. "Here is your package," Patrick said, handing over the box with deliberate care, refusing to let the man's attitude corrupt his own work ethic. The owner snatched it, muttering something about unskilled labor and slamming the door in Patrick's face, the heavy sound echoing like a gunshot in the quiet neighborhood. Patrick stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door, the image of Violet's sad, kind eyes burned into his memory. He wasn't just delivering a package today, he was delivering a test, and this man had failed spectacularly, while the maid had passed with flying colors. As he walked back to his delivery truck, the heat seemed a little less oppressive, fueled by a new sense of purpose that was slowly taking shape in his mind. He knew that destiny had a funny way of bringing people together, and today, it had used a rude billionaire and a humble delivery route to cross his path with someone special.
The social experiment he had envisioned was yielding data far more personal than he had anticipated. He climbed into the driver's seat, not as a defeated worker, but as a man with a plan, his mind already racing with the logistics of what had to happen next. He started the engine, the rumble of the truck covering the sound of his own deep exhale, realizing that this was no longer just about market research or customer service metrics. It was about Violet Parker. He had seen a glimpse of the hidden heir to a fortune of spirit and grace, trapped in a tower of arrogance. He checked his rear-view mirror one last time, watching the mansion shrink in the distance, knowing with absolute certainty that he would be back, not just to deliver another box, but to deliver something much more significant justice. Patrick drove the delivery truck around the corner, parking it in a secluded alleyway where a sleek, black limousine was idling, its engine purring like a dormant beast. He stepped out of the truck, the humidity instantly clinging to his uniform, and walked toward the luxury car, his demeanor shifting with every step. The driver, a burly man named Frank who had been with him for years, stepped out and opened the rear door, holding out a fresh towel and a bottle of chilled water. "Rough morning, sir?" Frank asked, eyeing the sweat stains on Patrick's shirt. Patrick just smirked, peeling off the cap that hid his face and tossing it onto the plush leather seat. "You have no idea, Frank," Patrick replied, sliding into the cool, air-conditioned interior of the limo, instantly transforming from a delivery boy into the powerful figure he truly was. He was the undercover CEO of the very logistics company he had been delivering for, a man who believed that the only way to truly understand his business was to work on the front lines. But today, the business data was secondary to the personal revelation he had just experienced. He began to unbutton the uniform, revealing a bespoke Italian shirt underneath, shedding the skin of the laborer to reclaim his identity as a billionaire. As the limo pulled away, gliding smoothly over the potholes that had rattled the delivery truck, Patrick opened his laptop, pulling up the dossier on the property he had just visited. This was the heart of his social experiment, testing how the wealthy elite treated those they considered beneath them. He had expected arrogance, sure, but the cruelty he witnessed today had struck a nerve. It wasn't just about the rude owner. It was about the silent suffering of Violet Parker. Her name was now flashing on his screen, a background check he had initiated the moment he saw her name tag. He realized that his secret identity was a double-edged sword. It gave him access to the truth, but it also left him feeling powerless in the moment, unable to intervene without blowing his cover. He scrolled through the data of the tenant's payment history. The complaints from previous delivery drivers and a pattern of abuse began to emerge. This wasn't an isolated bad day. This was a systemic rot within a house that, ironically, belonged to Patrick's own real estate portfolio. He was a landlord of the very man who had just humiliated him. "Frank, cancel my afternoon meetings," Patrick said, his voice steady but carrying an undertone of steel that his employees knew well. "I need to focus on the Marshall estate." Frank caught his eye in the rearview mirror, nodding solemnly. "Is it the tenant, sir?" Patrick looked out the tinted window, watching the city blur by. It's not just a tenant, Frank. It's a rescue mission now. He wasn't talking about property values or lease agreements. He was talking about a woman who had offered water to a stranger when she had nothing to give. The concept of a billionaire romance usually involved galas and high-stakes mergers, not delivery trucks and sandwiches. But Patrick felt a pull toward Violet that he couldn't explain with logic. It was a heart-touching realization that money had insulated him from genuine human connection, and it took a disguise to find something real. He tapped his fingers on the leather armrest, plotting his next move. He needed to go back. He needed to push the envelope. And he needed to see if Violet's kindness was a fluke or the core of who she was. He decided then and there to manipulate the logistics algorithm, assigning himself to that specific route for the foreseeable future. It was a risk if the board found out the CEO was playing delivery boy for a girl. The stock might wobble, but Patrick didn't care. This was about karma, and he was uniquely positioned to be its instrument. He would return to that mansion, not as a king, but as a servant to gather the evidence he needed. "Take us to the warehouse, Frank," Patrick commanded, closing his laptop with a decisive snap. "I have another shift tomorrow." The life-changing journey had just begun, and as the limo sped toward the corporate headquarters, Patrick Marshall smiled. He was about to teach a masterclass in humility to a man who thought he owned the world, and he was going to do it one package at a time. Inside the mansion, the air was thick with a silence that felt heavier than the summer heat outside. Violet Parker stood in the center of the gleaming kitchen, her hands trembling as she clutched the polishing rag. The owner, Mr. Sterling, was pacing back and forth, his voice a low, venomous hiss that echoed off the marble countertops. "I don't pay you to socialize with the help, Violet," he spat, his eyes narrowing with cruel delight. "You are here to work, not to run a charity for sweaty delivery boys." The humiliated feeling washed over her, a familiar wave of shame that she had learned to swallow along with her pride. Violet kept her head down, whispering a quiet "I'm sorry, sir," but her apology only seemed to fuel his irritation. He stepped closer, invading her personal space, using his physical presence to intimidate her. "You're lucky I even let you work here," he sneered. "With your family's history, who else would trust you?" It was a low blow, a direct hit to the drama of her past that kept her tethered to this job. She was trapped, not by chains, but by debts and a reputation she was desperately trying to rebuild. As Sterling stormed out of the room, leaving a trail of negative energy in his wake, Violet slumped against the counter, letting out a breath she didn't know she was holding. This mansion, with its crystal chandeliers and velvet drapes, was supposed to be her dream workplace, a stepping stone to a better life. Instead, it had become a prison. The irony was bitter. She spent her days surrounded by unimaginable wealth, yet she felt more destitute here than she ever had in her small apartment. It was a classic rich man, poor woman scenario, but without the romance, only the crushing weight of servitude. She moved to the window, looking out at the spot where the delivery truck had been. That driver, Patrick, had looked at her differently. There was no judgment in his eyes, only a weary understanding that resonated with her own exhaustion. In a world where she was constantly invisible or scolded, his brief nod of gratitude felt like a lifeline. She wondered who he was, unaware of the secret identity he carried, and felt a pang of concern for him. Was he treated this badly everywhere he went? Violet resumed her cleaning, the rhythmic motion of wiping surfaces serving as a meditative escape from her reality. She thought about the betrayal of her own circumstances, how life had promised her more, but delivered so little. Yet, despite the cruelty she endured, she refused to let her heart harden. She believed in karma, in the idea that eventually the universe would balance the scales. It was this quiet strength, this refusal to break, that defined her character more than any uniform ever could. The hours dragged on, each tick of the grandfather clock a reminder of the time she was losing in this house of horrors. She scrubbed floors that were already clean and polished silver that never tarnished, a Sisyphus in an apron. But today, something was different. The encounter with Patrick had planted a tiny seed of hope, a feeling that perhaps someone out there really saw her. She remembered the kindness test she had unknowingly passed. Bringing him water wasn't a calculated move, it was instinct. And as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the empty halls. Violet made a silent vow. She would not let Mr. Sterling's bitterness infect her soul. She would remain kind, even if it cost her, because that was the one thing he couldn't buy and the one thing she refused to sell. Night fell over the mansion, and Violet prepared to leave, her body aching but her spirit intact. She didn't know that her life was on the brink of a shocking reveal, that the delivery boy was actually the master of the house she cleaned. For now, she was just a girl walking to the bus stop, dreaming of a savior, unaware that he had already arrived. Over the next week, Patrick orchestrated a logistical nightmare for his dispatch team solely to ensure he was the one delivering to the Sterling residence every single day. It was a social experiment that had morphed into a personal crusade. Every morning, he would don a uniform, cap pulled low, and drive the truck up that winding driveway. And every day, he would find a reason to linger for just a moment longer, captivated by Violet Parker's quiet grace amidst the chaos of her environment. He initiated a subtle kindness test each time, asking for small for worse a glass of water, a signature, directions just to see if her empathy was consistent. It wasn't just consistent, it was unwavering. One Tuesday, he arrived with a feigned limp, acting as if the box was too heavy for his injured leg. Without hesitation, Violet rushed out to help him, grabbing one end of the package despite the risk of staining her pristine apron. "Let me help you," she insisted, her voice soft but firm. Patrick felt a pang of guilt for deceiving her, but it was overshadowed by a growing admiration. In a world of transaction, she was offering connection. He was falling for her, not as a billionaire romance cliché, but as a man witnessing a rare and beautiful spirit. The owner, Sterling, was usually absent or too self-absorbed to notice these brief interactions, which allowed a fragile friendship to bloom in the shadows of the porch. They exchanged small talk about the weather, the traffic, the difficulty of his job. Patrick played the part of the struggling delivery boy perfectly, complaining about the heat and the long hours. Violet listened with an intensity that made him feel more heard than any board directors ever had. She validated his struggle, offering words of encouragement that were heart-touching in their sincerity. "You work so hard," she told him one day, handing him a cold bottle of water she had smuggled out. "Don't let them wear you down, Patrick. You're worth more than a delivery route." Her words hit him like a physical blow. She was speaking to the delivery boy, but she was affirming the man beneath the mask. It was a moment of true love sparking in the most unlikely of places, fueled by the purity of her intent. She had no idea she was comforting a billionaire. She just saw a human being in need. Patrick found himself obsessed with these daily visits. He would return to his office, strip off the uniform, and sit in his penthouse, staring at the city lights, thinking only of her. He began to see the mansion not as an asset in his portfolio, but as the setting of a drama where he was the only audience member who could change the ending. The kindness test was no longer about her, it was about him. Was he brave enough to cross the line? He started pushing the boundaries. He would bring her small things of flour he found by the gate, a magazine left in the truck. Her smiles in return were the highlight of his day, brighter than any stock market jump. But he also saw the fear in her eyes, the constant glance over her shoulder. She was terrified of Sterling, and that terror fueled Patrick's desire for revenge against the man who held her happiness hostage. "I have a feeling things are going to turn around for you, Patrick," she said on a particularly rainy Thursday, sheltering with her own umbrella as he signed the manifest. Good things happen to good people. The irony was almost too much to bear. She was predicting karma for him, unaware that she was the one due for a cosmic reward. Patrick looked at her, rain dripping from the brim of his cap, and made a silent promise. "You have no idea how right you are, Violet." The routine was set, the bond was forged. But Patrick knew the charade couldn't last forever. The secret identity was becoming a barrier to the truth he wanted to share. He was building a foundation of lies, hoping that when the shocking reveal finally came, the structure of their relationship would be strong enough to hold the weight of his deception. The following Monday, the heat wave had broken, replaced by a gray, oppressive humidity. Patrick arrived at the usual time, but today he looked visibly drained part of the act, but also a reflection of the sleepless nights spent planning his next move. He sat on the steps of the service entrance, wiping his face, When Violet Parker emerged, looking nervous, she held a small, wrapped object in her hands. "I made you a sandwich," she whispered, glancing back at the house as if expecting a monster to burst forth. "I know you don't get a lunch break." Patrick took the sandwich, stunned. It was a simple thing, cheese and tomato on white bread, but to him, it was a Michelin star meal. "Violet, you shouldn't. If he catches you." Patrick started, his voice thick with emotion. Violet sat down next to him, maintaining a respectful distance but close enough that he could smell her vanilla soap. "I don't care anymore," she confessed, her shoulders slumping. "I feel so trapped, Patrick. The debts. My sick mother. This job is the only thing keeping us afloat." This was the first time she had opened up about her personal life, and the rich man, poor woman divide suddenly felt like a canyon. Patrick listened, chewing slowly, every bite a reminder of her sacrifice. She was risking her livelihood to feed him, a poor delivery boy, while she was drowning in her own financial drama. "How much is the debt?" Patrick asked, trying to sound casual, his mind already calculating a wire transfer. "Too much," Violet sighed, tears pricking her eyes. "It feels like a hole I can't climb out of. I thought working here. I thought it would be a fresh start. But Mr. Sterling, he deducts money for everything. A chipped glass, a smudge on the window, him barely making enough to survive." Patrick felt a cold rage spread through his veins. This was wage theft, plain and simple. It wasn't just cruelty, it was illegal. His legal team would have a field day with this, but he had to stay in character. "You have a good heart, Violet," Patrick said, turning to face her. "And I believe that destiny doesn't let people like you suffer forever. There's a way out." He wanted to tell her right then and there, "I can pay it all off. I can buy this house and give it to you." But he knew the shocking reveal had to be timed perfectly to destroy Sterling completely. He needed to be the undercover CEO for just a little longer. Violet looked at him, a sad smile playing on her lips. "You're a dreamer, Patrick. That's why I like talking to you. You haven't let the world break you yet." It was a heart-touching moment of connection. She saw him as a kindred spirit, a fellow survivor. "If only you knew," he thought. "Him not surviving, him hunting. We're going to get through this," Patrick said, his voice dropping to a serious register. "Both of us." It was a promise that carried the weight of his billions, though she didn't know it. For a moment, the air between them crackled with an unsaid emotion, a potential for true love that went beyond gratitude. Suddenly, a shadow fell over them. The door behind Violet creaked open. The moment shattered. Patrick stood up instinctively, shielding Violet with his body. The social experiment was about to face its most volatile variable. The sandwich, half-eaten, sat on the steepest symbol of a bond that was about to be tested by fire. The screen door slammed open, and Mr. Sterling marched out, his face a mask of purple rage. He didn't just look angry, he looked offended by their very existence. "What is this?" he screamed, pointing a shaking finger at the sandwich wrapper. "I pay you to clean, not to feed the strays." The insult hung in the air, gross and dehumanizing. Patrick Marshall felt his fists clench at his sides. As a CEO, he could destroy this man with a phone call. As a delivery boy, he had to stand there and take it. Sterling turned his vitriol onto Patrick. "And you leech, begging for food from a maid? Have you no pride?" He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled wad of cash, and threw it at Patrick's chest. The bills fluttered to the ground, landing in the dirt. "Here, go buy some better clothes. You look like a disgrace." It was the ultimate act of being humiliated. The judgment was absolute. Sterling wasn't just attacking Patrick's poverty, he was attacking his humanity. Emotional check-in pause for a second. If you were Patrick, seeing the woman you care about abused like this, could you keep your cool? Or would you break cover right now? Hold that thought. Patrick stood frozen, not out of fear, but out of sheer effort it took to restrain himself. But before he could speak, Violet Parker did something unthinkable. She stepped in front of Patrick. "Don't speak to him like that," she cried out, her voice shaking but loud. "He is a better man than you will ever be." The silence that followed was deafening. Violet, the quiet mouse, had roared. Sterling looked at her, stunned, then let out a cruel laugh. A better man? He's a nobody. And you're fired. The words hung there. Betrayal of her loyalty, the end of her income, the collapse of her world. Violet paled, realizing what she had done. She had sacrificed everything for Patrick. Patrick looked at the money on the ground, then at Sterling, and finally at Violet. He saw her terror, but he also saw her redemption. She had reclaimed her dignity at the cost of her security. "You're making a mistake." "Sterling," Patrick said, his voice low and dangerous, shedding the delivery boy accent entirely. "Get off my property." Sterling shouted. "Both of you." Violet began to sob, backing away. Patrick reached out, gently touching her arm. "It's okay," he whispered. "Trust me." But how could she? She just lost her job because of Sandwich. This was the tipping point. The karma train had left the station. Patrick knew that the time for games was over. He looked at Sterling with a look that should have terrified the older man, a look of absolute, cold calculation. "Keep the money," Patrick said, stepping over the bills. "You're going to need it for your lawyers." Patrick walked Violet to the bus stop, the silence between them heavy with unspoken fears. She was distraught, her hands covering her face. "I'm so stupid," she sobbed. "I don't know why I said that. Now I have nothing." Patrick's heart broke for her. He wanted to shake her and say, "You have everything. You have me." But he knew the shock would be too much. He had to reveal the truth in a way that restored her power, not just his. As he watched her bus pull away, a dark determination settled over him. He called his limo. "Frank, take me to the office and get legal on the line." As he rode back, he pulled up the deed to the mansion on his tablet. It was a stunning piece of architecture, a dream home for many. But as he looked at the photos, he realized something profound. The mansion was just a shell. It was cold, empty, and tainted by Sterling's presence. It only looked like a dream because Violet Parker was inside it. Her warmth, her resilience, her care, that was what made a house a home. Without her, it was just a pile of expensive rocks. Patrick Marshall, the billionaire real estate mogul, had missed the most basic lesson of investment. Of value is in the people, not the property. This realization was life-changing. He reviewed the lease agreement. Sterling was in violation of several clauses, mostly related to property maintenance and, ironically, conduct unbecoming of the community. But Patrick didn't want a simple eviction. He wanted a spectacle. He wanted to expose Sterling for fraud he was. He discovered that Sterling had been subleasing the guest house illegally and pocketing the cash, a direct breach of contract. But there was more. Patrick dug deeper into the company accounts associated with Sterling's business. He found irregularities. The man wasn't just a bad tenant, he was a crook. The secret identity of the delivery boy had allowed Patrick to get close enough to smell the rot. And now the CEO was going to perform the surgery. He hatched a plan for the next day. It involved the police's legal team and one final delivery. He would return to the house, not to deliver a package, but to deliver the final verdict. He needed to confirm Sterling's corruption beyond a doubt before dropping the hammer. He looked at the image of the mansion again. "It's your house, Violet," he whispered to the empty car. "You just don't know it yet." The destiny of that property was about to be rewritten. It would go from a place of suffering to a monument of true love. Patrick spent the night not in his bed, but in his war room, mapping out the sequence of events. He was no longer playing a role. He was directing the finale of a drama that would be talked about for years. The rich man was coming for the poor man's soul, and he was bringing the full weight of his empire with him. The next morning, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Patrick arrived in the delivery truck, but this time the back was empty except for one specific package. It was a bait package marked as high-value electronics, but containing a GPS tracker and a glitter bomb rig to explode upon opening. He walked up to the door, knowing Violet wouldn't be there. The absence of her presence made the house look dead. Sterling answered the door, looking smug. "Back for more abuse?" He sneered. "Where's your little girlfriend?" "Oh, wait. She's in the unemployment line." Patrick ignored the jab, his face a mask of professional indifference. "Just a final delivery, sir. Requires a signature." He handed over the clipboard. Sterling signed, snatching the box. "What is this? More junk?" Patrick watched him closely. "It's marked as a priority return, sir. The company needs you to hold it for pickup later today. Do not open it." It was a test of integrity. If Sterling was an honest man, the box would sit on the table. If he was a thief Patrick suspected, the box would disappear. Yeah, whatever," Sterling grumbled, kicking the door shut. Patrick walked back to the truck, but he didn't leave. He drove around the block and parked, pulling out his tablet to monitor the tracker. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Suddenly, the signal moved. It wasn't staying in the hallway. It was moving toward the back of the house, towards a garage. "Gotcha," Patrick muttered. Sterling was stealing the package. It was petty theft beneath a man of his stature, but it proved his character. He was a scavenger. But Patrick needed more than just a stolen box to ruin him. He needed to expose the man's soul. Just then, a police cruiser turned onto the street. Patrick's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't called them yet. What was happening? He tuned into the police scanner app on his phone. Dispatch, responding to a call of theft at 42 Oak Drive. Suspect is a former employee. Patrick's blood ran cold. Sterling wasn't just stealing the package. He was framing Violet. He had called the police to accuse her of stealing something before she was fired, covering his own tracks and destroying her reputation in one move. It was a shocking reveal of pure evil. Patrick threw the tablet onto the passenger seat. The social experiment was over. This was now a rescue operation. He slammed the truck into gear, tires screeching as he peeled out a hiding spot. He had to get to the house before the police took her away. But he was still in his uniform. To the police, he was just a delivery boy. Would they even listen? The scene at the mansion was chaotic. 2 police cars were parked at an aggressive angle in the driveway, lights flashing, painting the white stone walls in strokes of red and blue. Violet Parker was there, standing by the police cruiser, tears streaming down her face, her hand shaking violently as an officer questioned her. Sterling stood on the porch, playing the victim perfectly, holding a silver necklace that he claimed she had stolen. "I trusted her," Sterling shouted for the neighbors to hear. "And this is how she repays me. Stealing family heirlooms." It was a masterclass in betrayal. Sterling had planted the necklace in Violet's bag before firing her, a contingency plan to ensure she never worked in this town again. Violet was sobbing, tried to explain. "I didn't take it. I swear. He put it there." But the officers looked skeptical. To them, it was a classic case the desperate made stealing from the wealthy employer. The judgment was already passed in their eyes. Be honest. In a situation like this, who does society believe? The rich owner or the crying maid? It's a painful truth, isn't it? Patrick jumped out his truck, running toward the scene. "Stop. She didn't do it," he yelled, waving his arms. The officers turned, hands resting on their holsters. They saw a frantic man in a delivery uniform. "Step back." "Sir," one officer commanded. "This doesn't concern you." "It does concern me," Patrick argued, trying to push past. "He's lying. He's setting her up." Sterling laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Oh, look, the accomplice arrives. I bet they planned it together." "Officer, arrest him too." The police looked at Patrick with suspicion. The narrative was shifting against them fast. Violet looked at Patrick, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and horror. "Patrick, go," she cried. "Don't get involved. They'll hurt you." Even in her darkest moment, she was trying to protect him. It was a testament to her character, and it broke Patrick's heart. This was the drama reaching its fever pitch. The system was rigged against them. The officer grabbed Violet's arm, spinning her around to cuff her. The click of the handcuffs echoed like a thunderclap. "You're under arrest for grand larceny," the officer droned. Violet let out a wail of despair that pierced the morning air. It was the sound of a life breaking. Patrick lunged forward, but the second officer shoved him back hard. "I said back off, pal, or you're next." Patrick stumbled, falling onto the gravel. He was a billionaire. He could buy this entire police department. But in this uniform, in this moment, he was nobody. The social experiment had hit a wall of reality. He watched helpless as they shoved Violet into the back of the cruiser. She looked at him through the glass, her face a mask of defeat. She thought her life was over. She thought karma had failed her. Patrick slammed his fist into the ground, scraping his knuckles. He had waited too long. His game had cost a woman. He loved her freedom. The police car sped away, sirens wailing, leaving a cloud of dust and a shattered silence in their wake. Sterling stood on the porch, dusting off his hands as if he had just taken out the trash. He looked at Patrick, who was still on the ground, and smirked. "Learn your place, boy." Sterling spat, then turned and walked back into the mansion, slamming the heavy door. Patrick sat there in the dirt, the humiliation burning him from the inside out. He was Patrick Marshall. He was one of the most powerful men in the city, and he had just been tossed aside like garbage. The irony was suffocating. He had worn the disguise to understand the plight of the common man, but he hadn't prepared for the utter powerlessness that came with it. He stood up slowly, his knees shaking not from fear, but from a cold, focused rage. The undercover CEO facade was dead. It was time for the secret identity to rise. He walked back to his delivery truck, his movements mechanical. He didn't look back at the house. The house was no longer a target, it was a battlefield. He grabbed his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. He dialed his chief of legal counsel. "This is Marshall. Code red. I need the entire team at the 4th Precinct. Now." The voice on the other end was confused. "Sir, are you okay?" Patrick's voice was shards of ice. "No, I am not okay. Someone just made the biggest mistake of their life. Bring the file on Sterling. Bring everything." As he drove the truck back to the warehouse, he stripped off the delivery cap and threw out the window. It was a symbolic gesture. He was done delivering packages. He was about to deliver retribution. The love story had taken a dark turn, descending into a thriller where the clock was ticking. He arrived at the warehouse, ignoring the confused looks of his manager. "I quit," Patrick said simply, tossing the keys on the desk. He walked out the back door to where Frank was waiting with the limo. "Precinct. Drive fast," Patrick commanded, sliding into the back seat. Inside the limo, he changed. Off came the sweaty polyester shirt. On went the crisp, white dress shirt. Off came the cargo pants. On went the tailored trousers. He was shedding the skin of the victim and armoring himself for war. He looked in the mirror. The eyes staring back weren't the soft eyes of the delivery boy. They were the shark-like eyes of a billionaire on a warpath. He checked the tracking data on the tablet. The bait package Sterling had stolen, it was still in the house. That was the leverage. Sterling still had the stolen goods. But that was just the appetizer. Patrick was about to serve the main course. Violet was sitting in a cell right now, terrified. He needed to get to her. The redemption arc had to be swift and absolute. Inside the holding cell, Violet Parker sat on the cold metal bench, hugging her knees to her chest. The smell of stale coffee and disinfectant filled her nose. She was numb. The shocking reveal of her arrest had shattered her world. She had no money for a lawyer. She had a record now. Who would hire a thief? Her sick mother would be destitute. The spiral of negativity was endless. She thought of Patrick, the sweet delivery boy who had tried to save her. She hoped he hadn't gotten into trouble. He was the only bright spot in her life, and now she would probably never see him again. It felt like destiny was mocking her, dangling happiness in front of her face only to snatch it away. Meanwhile, in the back of the limo, Patrick was feeling a different kind of despair. He realized that his social experiment was arrogant. He had treated people's lives like variables in a test, and because of that, Violet was suffering. If he had just been himself from the start, the rich Mononi of this would have happened. Sterling wouldn't have dared to touch her. The guilt was heavy, a physical weight on his chest. He wondered if she would ever forgive him. When he revealed who he was, would she see a savior, or would she see a liar who watched her suffer for data? The true love he felt was now tainted by deception. "We're 5 minutes out, sir," Frank announced. Patrick nodded, staring at the passing city. He had to focus. Emotions later. Action now. He called the police commissioner a man he played golf with. "Commissioner, it's Patrick Marshall. You have a woman in custody, Violet Parker. It's a mistake. A frame-up. The commissioner was hesitant. Patrick? What are you talking about? My guys say they have witnesses. Patrick cut him off. The witness is a liar and a thief. I have proof. I am coming down there with my legal team. Do not process her. Do not put her in the system. If you do, I will sue the department into the Stone Age. It was a bluff, mostly, but it bought time. Patrick hung up, his hand shaking. He was playing God with the legal system, pulling strings that only the one could pull. It felt dirty, but for Violet, he would swim through mud. The drama was internal now, the battle between his ethics and his need to save her. The limo screeched to a halt in front of the precinct. A team of Suits' lawyers was already waiting on the steps. They looked like a pack of wolves waiting for the alpha. Patrick stepped out, buttoning his jacket. He looked immaculate, powerful, untouchable. "Let's go," he said. "We're getting her out." Patrick Marshall swept into the police station like a hurricane. The desk sergeant looked up, annoyed, ready to tell him to wait in line. But the words died in his throat when he saw the phalanx of lawyers and the sheer aura of authority radiating from Patrick. "I'm here for Violet Parker," Patrick announced, his voice booming through the lobby. "And I'm here to file charges against Arthur Sterling for perjury, theft, and defamation." The station fell silent. This wasn't just a bail. Hearing this was a corporate takeover of a crime scene. The commissioner came out of his office, looking flustered. "Patrick, please, let's discuss this in my office." Patrick shook his head. "No, I want her released immediately. My team has the evidence." One of the lawyers stepped forward, slapping a folder on the desk. GPS data, audio recordings, and a documented history of Mr. Sterling's fraudulent lease activities. He framed her. The police looked through the files, eyes widening. The evidence was overwhelming. The delivery boy had been recording everything. Patrick paced the floor, impatient. He felt like a caged tiger. Every second Violet spent in that cell was an insult to justice. He was shedding the last remnants of the delivery boy persona. He was commanding, ruthless, and efficient. The hidden heir to the situation was truth, and he was forcing it into the light. "Bring her out," the commissioner finally ordered, looking defeated. "And get a warrant for Sterling." Patrick let out a breath, but he didn't relax. He needed to see her. He needed to know she was okay. This was a turning point. The social experiment had officially ended. The reality of his power was now the only thing that mattered. He had used his privilege to crush a bully. It was life-changing for him, realizing that wealth wasn't just a luxury, it was a tool for protection. He turned to Frank. "Get the car ready. We're going back to the mansion." Frank raised an eyebrow. "The mansion, sir?" Patrick nodded, a grim smile appearing. "Yes, I have an eviction to perform." He checked his reflection in the glass partition. He looked like the billionaire he was. But inside, he was still the man who had sat on the steps eating a cheese sandwich. He hoped Violet could see that. The shocking reveal was minutes away. The heavy metal door buzzed and clicked open. Violet looked up, her eyes red and swollen. A female officer stepped in, her demeanor completely changed. "You're free to go, Miss Parker," she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. Violet blinked, confused. "What? But the necklace." "It was a mistake," the officer said, unlocking the cell. "Someone posted your bail. And the charges. Well, it looks like they're being dropped." Violet stood up, her legs wobbly. She walked out into the hallway, expecting to see a public defender or maybe a charity worker. Instead, she saw the police chief himself walking toward her. "Miss Parker," he said, extending a hand, "I want to personally apologize for the inconvenience. We have received new evidence that clears you completely." Violet was stunned. This didn't happen. Poor maids don't just get personal apologies from chiefs. Who did this?" She stammered. The chief smiled cryptically. "A friend. A very powerful friend. He's waiting outside." Violet's mind raced. She didn't have powerful friends. She only had Patrick, but he was just a delivery driver. She walked through the precinct, the officers parting like the Red Sea. It was surreal. She felt like she was in a dream, or perhaps a very strange drama. She pushed open the front doors, and the sunlight hit her face, blinding her for a moment. At the bottom of the stairs, a sleek black limousine was waiting. A chauffeur held the door open. Violet stopped. This had to be a mistake. She looked around for the delivery truck, for Patrick in his cap, but there was only this luxury car. "Miss Parker?" The chauffeur Frank said kindly. "Please, he is waiting for you." Violet hesitated. "Who?" Frank just smiled. "The man who knows you didn't steal the necklace." With a trembling heart, she stepped towards the car. It was a leap of faith. She was stepping out of the world of judgment and into a world of mystery. She slid into the back seat, the leather cool against her skin. The car was empty. "Where is he?" she asked. Frank closed the door. "He'll meet you at the destination." The drive was a blur. Violet sat in the opulent silence of the limousine, her mind trying to piece together the puzzle. Why was she in a limo? Who was this mysterious benefactor? And why were they driving? Back to the mansion? Panic flared in her chest as she recognized the route. "No, please," she said to the partition. "I can't go back there." "Mr. Sterling." Frank's voice came over the intercom, calm and reassuring. "Mr. Sterling is no longer concerned, Miss Parker. Trust the process." Trust. That word again. Patrick had said it too. Trust me. Was there a connection? But it seemed impossible. Patrick was struggling just like her. Unless... The thought was too wild to entertain. A secret identity? A billionaire romance novel come to life? No, that was fiction. This was real life. The limo turned into the driveway. The police cars were gone. The house stood silent and imposing. But as they pulled up to the front entrance, Violet saw something that made her breath catch in her throat. Standing on the front steps, right where the delivery truck usually parked, was a man. But he wasn't wearing a uniform. He was wearing a bespoke navy suit that fit him perfectly. He had a gold watch on his wrist and polished leather shoes. But the face, the kind eyes, the gentle smile, it was Patrick. Violet froze. Her brain couldn't reconcile the two images. The sweaty, limping delivery boy and this titan of industry standing before her. She stepped out of the car, her legs feeling like jelly. "Patrick?" she whispered. He walked down the steps, not with the rush of a worker, but with the confidence of a king. "Hello, Violet," he said, his voice the same, but the context entirely new. "I'm sorry for the deception, but I had to know." She stared at him, shock replacing fear. "Know what?" she asked. Patrick reached out and took her hand. "I had to know if there was anyone left in this world who would be kind to a nobody. And I found you." Before Violet could process the shocking reveal, the front door banged open. Sterling stormed out, looking disheveled. He stopped dead when he saw Patrick. He didn't recognize him at first in the suit, but then he saw the eyes. "You," Sterling stammered. "The delivery boy?" Patrick's expression hardened. "Not exactly," he said coldly. "My name is Patrick Marshall. I own this house. I own the company that delivers your packages. And frankly, Mr. Sterling, I own the debt you've been hiding." Sterling's face went white. "Marshall? The Marshall Group?" He looked like he was going to vomit. He had humiliated his landlord. He had framed the landlord's love interest. The karma was instantaneous and crushing. "You're evicting me?" Sterling squeaked. "I'm doing more than that," Patrick said, his voice ringing with authority. "I'm pressing charges for the theft of my employee's property, that necklace, and for the attempted fraud with my delivery company. The police are on their way back with a warrant. You have 5 minutes to vacate my property." Sterling looked at Violet, then at Patrick, realizing the magnitude of his error. He had played the villain in a story where he didn't know the hero was watching. He slumped, defeated, and scurried back inside to grab his things. Patrick turned back to Violet, who was staring at him with wide eyes. You own the house?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Patrick nodded. "I bought it years ago. I never lived in it because it felt empty. I rented it to him." "A mistake. And the delivery job?" she asked. "A social experiment," he admitted. "I wanted to see how people treat the help. I found a lot of cruelty, Violet. But I also found you." He squeezed her hand. You defended me when I was nothing. You fed me when you had nothing. That is worth more than all the real estate in the city. It was a moment of pure redemption. The rich man, poor woman dynamic was flipped. She wasn't a maid anymore. She was the guest of honor. The drama had resolved into justice. Seeing Sterling run away like a scared rat. Admit it, that felt good. If you love seeing bullies get what they deserve, hit that like button right now. The police arrived shortly after and took Sterling away in the very handcuffs he had intended for Violet. As the sirens faded, a peace settled over the estate. Patrick led Violet up the stairs to the massive front doors. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. I delivered a lot of packages to this house, Patrick said softly, looking at the grand foyer. But you delivered hope to me, Violet. You reminded me that humanity still exists. He pressed the keys into her palm. I don't want this house if you're not in it. It's yours. No rent, no debt, just a home. Violet looked at the keys and at him, tears streaming down her face again. But this time they were tears of joy. Patrick, I can't. You can, he insisted. And I have one more question. Not a test, just a question. He got down on one knee, right there on the porch where they had shared a sandwich. I know we did this backwards. You met the delivery boy first. But would you give the billionaire a chance to take you on a real date? To be the man who stand by your side? It was the ultimate true love proposal. Not of marriage yet, but of a future. Violet dropped the keys and threw her arms around his neck. Yes, she sobbed. Yes, Patrick. They stood there embracing as the sun set over the estate. The delivery boy and the maid. The billionaire and the lady of the house. It was a life-changing ending to a story that started with a simple box. Patrick looked over her shoulder at the driveway. He had found what he was looking for. The social experiment was a success not because of the data, but because of the destiny it revealed. And as for the mansion, it finally looked like a dream because Violet was now truly inside it. Patrick proved that the most expensive thing a person can wear is not a tailored suit, but a kind heart. In a world obsessed with price tags, Violet taught us the true meaning of value. It is a powerful reminder that while money can buy a mansion, only love and respect can build a home. If you also refuse to judge a book by its cover and believe that integrity is the only currency that matters, then you have found your place. Subscribe and join our community, our building a movement of people who see the truth behind the mask. Let's make this message loud and clear. Like this video to show that bullying has no place in our world and that justice is still alive. Comment below what is the smallest act of kindness a stranger has ever done for you that you will never forget. Let's fill the comments with hope. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that good guys can and do finish first. And while you are here, don't let the inspiration fade. Our channel is a treasure chest of emotional journeys, just like this one. Go explore our older videos and discover other stories that will touch your soul. As for what is coming next, let's just say you want to blink. Turn on the notification bell so you're the first to witness the next chapter. You never know who might be wearing a disguise in our next story, and you definitely don't want to miss the reveal.